The first battle where he lost the city to Archduke Charles in 1798, he was outnumbered, but still just maybe lost like less casualties and inflicted a bigger beating on the enemy. And in the second Battle of Zurich, he completely destroyed the Austrian army there, which allowed France to maintain control of the Swiss. So it's really down to him. And he was quite respected because even when he commanded in the Peninsular War, as we see here, right, he was predominantly in charge of subjugating Portugal and the British. And while ultimately not successful because he could not breach the defensive lines in front of Lisbon, the Duke of Wellington himself said he would always not sleep properly when uh, Massena faced him in the field. But yeah, I would definitely have a lot of issue, like I have to keep him on a tight leash for his plundering because he was quite charming at that activity. It's actually why, despite Napoleon's orders in the first Italian campaign, the province of Piedmont was heavily plundered because the soldiers knew that if Generals Massena and Augereau were the biggest plunderers, they are not going to face too much consequence. And yeah, definitely he did have his rivalry with Soult and Ney, and both came in the Peninsular War. So I'd have to definitely manage that. So, but if Soult is behind the lines, they're not really directly involved because their conflicts stemmed more from on-field military doctrines and decisions. So that's just my way of wanting to, uh, manage those expectations. This is like him at Zurich. Uh, my other fourth independent commander, I would definitely give to Marshal Sonsier. I think we explained pretty well about his capabilities, but in a way, I would also put him in charge of areas where I might expect a strong enemy advance because he was considered the best defensive general of all. Even Napoleon noted that. I think it was Napoleon said, "In the art of defense, no one is better, though I am superior to him in attack." Which, okay, I cannot question that. And it is actually thanks to Saudsier's defense of Dresden that allowed Napoleon to kind of, catch the much larger coalition forces and inflict a pretty big victory. In that battle, it was 10,000 French casualties, inflicting between 38 to 42,000 on the Austrian, Prussian, and Russian forces. Anything you'd like to add, guys, on any of these marshals? If I continue.
No, I mean, we same pick, right? It's just I guess
Yeah.
I could have some things to say about Masena, but I already have.
I
So
mean, feel free, feel free.
nah, we can go through uh,
All right.
after you're done.
Okay, my next is Michel Ney as well. And as we both said, it's his. This is why I love him. This is like his Russian retreat, and that's where he earned that title, the bravest of the brave. And it said a French cavalry colonel said, the presence of Ney on the battle, like flashing that confident smile, encouraging the men, talking to the generals, even while the situation looks so dire, that really inspired many of the soldiers to fight on. And it's really a very, very admirable trait. And it was said, like, when his rear guard was isolated near, or like, by the Russians and called on to surrender, he just said, screw this, we're going. They crossed the river Dnieper, I think it was, uh, with Ney personally pulling the men out of the frozen water if they fell through. And they were going through the square. And, that's how they rejoined the army and then continued the rear guard action. So, I would definitely be having Ney for this. But Yeah, he does also have his command, but Ney would be the first of the next four marshals who would be, like, say, under direct command with me if I were the supreme commander. Because if they have a clear vision and plan, they are able to, perform very admirably. Because one thing is, Ney, when he was facing the coalition in 1813, in the build up to the Battle of Leipzig, he did kind of, like, blunder into a few traps when just given independent command. Like several other marshals, even MacDonald also walked into a trap as well. So it is with that consideration in mind, I want to put Ney as, like, a commander just under my direct role and supervision. So while the others, Sonsi, Masena, Sushi, and Lands would be like full independent commanders, these four that I'm going to be talking about now will be, like, on field direct tactical commanders to me. Now, the next is Marshal Oudinot. Now, he's nothing brilliant, okay? He doesn't have that tactical flair of, say, a Lance or Ney or Sult and such, right? But he was a man that the men loved. He could inspire them, though when he's not recovering in the hospital, because I think this is a good example of why. It is said he was injured like 30 times in his battle career. So yeah, it's a miracle he did not die so soon, because he died at the age of 80, my dad. But with Udino, you get this kind of soldier, man for his man. And not to mention, he did actually capture a ship with land forces. And more importantly, Udino was one of the two marshals who was supposedly never had to have had any big feud with any of the other marshals. Vic, would you like to guess who was that other guy?
Mm,
He's not on our list, but
oh,
he never feuded with anybody.
is it? It's not one of the honorary ones, though.
No,
All right.
but I did flash his name in one of the maps.
Oh, no, I can't think of it.
Marshal Mortier.
Mortier. All right.
Yeah. It was in the Battle of Friedland map where he took up the center when he reinforced Lance on the second day of battle. That's where. But these guys were pretty good at not feuding and just being soldiers. So I think that would be good for me, because then it's just like one less thing to worry about. I just would have to probably worry about his medical bills. Next, um, this is personally my favorite, Marshal Lefebvre. Just the pure soldier. I think that's the only way I can describe him. He was a veteran. He knew to fight. He cared for his men. Nothing super brilliant in independent command, which was seen in the 1808 Napoleon intervention, where Lefebvre actually commanded one wing and Lance commanded the second wing, and Lefebvre was not able to move fast, but he's a man that is going to inspire his men, care for them, and that is pretty good for me as a battlefield commander. Great example being the siege of Danzig, where he also led them in person, despite being, I think, by the time 50 years old. So he led the men of the 10th Corps on an attack against the city of Danzig in person. And it's nothing really flashy for me to say, except for that soldier's mentality. And he was still quite an honest person as well. I think one example was in the aftermath of his of the Napoleonic Wars. One of his friends commented about Lefebvre's wealth. He invited him to the courtyard and said, "I'll have 10 shots at you with my musket at 20 paces If I miss all 10, the estate is yours in full. When that friend declined, he said, I had 1,000 bullets fired at me at closer before I got all this. And I would even go as far as to say Sult's foundational knowledge only came from Lefebvre because Sult also publicly acknowledged that he learned a lot from him. And during the Russian retreat, he commanded the old guard of the Imperial Guard units. And despite being 56 at that time, he marched the entire retreat on foot at the head of the guard. So that's definitely one. And my last marshal is Marshal Victor. Vic, this is to honor you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So I think at times in the past, for the audience, is I've called Victor Marshal Victor quite often just because he also likes the Napoleonic eras. But Marshal Victor, in all essence, was still a very capable general, and I think the support he gave Lance at Montebello and Marengo, I think this is a great example because Marengo is his units were first at the front that skirmish with the Austrian forces of General Melas from that came out from Alessandria, and it was Lance and his men and Kellerman that kind of like for the first part of the battle managed to hold back the Austrian advance before they overwhelmed them with numbers and much more artillery. And they did manage to fight hard despite the severe pressure, holding the line. And that's where you can definitely give Victor the plus. He performed very well in the Battle of Friedland, where he commanded Bernadotte's first corps, as Bernadotte was recovering from a gunshot wound, and led an attack with Ney and Mortier, Lannes, and Grouchy that crushed Bennigsen's army